Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Stories. My name is Kim Britz and my beautiful, wonderful co-host for Lunchtime Stories, my beautiful cousin from Fort Lauderdale, Lauren Britz. Hello, Lauren. How are you?
Hi, Kev. How are you doing? Coming to you here from sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We've just had a crazy storm pass us by, but now it's sunny again, so we're all good to go. How are things in fabulous South Africa?
Fabulous. It's, for us, spring is sprung on the 1st of September usually, and this year it's like the 15th. Where were you? It's a whole bunch many days later, and it's only this week that we've really started feeling that sunshine sort of coming out. So the planet literally, you can see the seasons they're sunning up. And it's definitely something we need to start paying attention to.
Sure.
On that note, if anyone knows how I can start getting involved with planting trees, I know that sounds like off the cuff, but I do. I have like when you go to a public bathroom and the water's dripping, I'm the one that tries to close the water.
I love it. I'm the same way. Maybe it's got something to do with the way we were brought up or how we lived when we were younger, but I'm the same way. I love trees. I'm always building, growing trees out in the back here, and turning off the tap.
Because I essentially want to be involved in a way that sort of drives an awareness, but also just planting trees. It's a really good thing, and there's so many trees that are waiting to be planted in terms of the world desperately needs trees. So.
Absolutely.
But from our chats so far, it's telling stories and versions of what we're experiencing from two different countries. And so one of the things that you and I have briefly touched on is the importance of embracing what's different. And I think it's in the work that I do quite specifically, and I'm even thinking from a creativity perspective, when we don't embrace what's different, we very quickly get stunted, and there's a lot of resistance that goes with it. And one of the conversations we've also touched on is Black Lives Matter. So don't you want to sort of give us an idea, from my perspective, from seeing what's happening in America, and from the riots, from people starting to peacefully protest, and a lot of the time it is, but there's still ructions, there's still stuff that's happening, and without wanting to have a racial conversation, but like in terms of how you're experiencing that, how are you guys sort of? Because I know whenever this topic comes up, it's a difficult one. But how are you guys experiencing it? What's standing out for you about this topic?
Oh, this is such a great topic to talk about. And, being South African, I came here a while ago, and I come with a platform already created because I didn't grow up in this country. I wasn't reared or raised. I didn't grab the cultural norms as I was growing up. So I am still very much in the framework of a South African mind, and which has changed over the years. Talk about embracing change. And I want to just preface what I'm going to say with, everyone thinks that we speak the same language as Americans, essentially, English. Like you speak English, you go there, they speak English, it'll be fine, right? I want to say in the nicest way that America was a culture shock to me. It's very, very different, even though we speak the same language. And while I love it, there was that to overcome. And that speaks to what's happening now. America has been going along and we've been enjoying a lot of things. And, there's always been unrest as far as wars and stuff, but it seems to have come home base now. We haven't really had too much going on our land here, whereas South Africa, of course, we've experienced that a lot, of course, growing up during apartheid, etc. So what happened one day, and the timing of it was so strange. Oh,
sorry. On that note, just to lead into your story, I just want to ask you that question. I remember when in apartheid era, my mom, because then we were suddenly now going to school with Black people.
Yeah.
However you would
I think we were
closest
on
age.
10 or 11.
Yeah, I remember my mom sitting me down and saying, okay, we're going to have this conversation now about, you realize that Black people are going to go to school with you. And I quite specifically remember thinking to myself, why are we having a sit down moment about this? Is there something I should be worried about? Do you know, it kind of just, that was my instinctive kind of going, I don't understand why we're having a serious sit down conversation. And so since then, since that moment, it was kind of life defining to me, because I thought, uh, I don't, to me, people are people. I've
Right.
always grown up like that. And I've really not, and I know, our cultures, we as our family have had quite a strong, what's the word, opinion about race. But yet, for me, and I'm, I know you as well. It's we take a whole different view on it. Did you experience that as well? Like a, huh? Like a what? Like when you in that moment?
I did. I experienced it like that then, although I grew up with Black people. So it wasn't, I grew up
Yeah,
on a small farm. I was more like, when I went to school, I was more like, where are all my friends? I
yeah.
go home and I have all these Black friends. And I'm not like, hey, look at my Black friends. I'm like, hey, look at my friends.
My friends, yeah.
And then I'm all of a sudden coming to school and they're not there. They're not allowed to be there. And I'm like, why, why? I don't get it. So, we didn't understand all those things, but that did happen again when I moved to America in a weird way. Look, it's not that we don't mix. There's no segregation, lawful segregation here.
Yeah.
But I will say that first they kind of separated and stayed in their own lanes. And also what was more prevalent to me was we didn't talk about it. We just didn't talk about it at all.
There was just a cut in the network there. So just say that again, when you guys, so just leave, or I'll cut it out. So
That's okay, that's okay.
Just when, I'll ask you that question again. So was it weird for you because you guys, now what was the question? How did you experience that? Because to me, it was weird that my parents were sort of prefacing like, oh, just go from there, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was weird for me in one way, but it was weird when I went to school. Because when I was at home, I was on the small farm that we lived on, and there were a lot of Black people in my world. I mean, it wasn't segregated. My home wasn't segregated, but the rest of my life was.
Yeah.
And we started really wondering why that was. That happened again to me when I moved to America. Not so much that we weren't allowed to mix, but that people just weren't really naturally driven to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And I do mean racially, like people just kept in their own lanes. The other thing that I noticed, and this was sort of like, the first 10 to 12 years out of my 15 years here, one of the other things was that people would come to me because I'm South African, thinking they know or understand my history. And then they would whisper things in my ear and I'd be like, whoa, I think you're telling the wrong person. But it was very telling to me that people were not talking to each other. All they wanted to do was separate, be in their bubbles, and they just, as long as everyone was living peacefully, everyone was fine. Of course, that is not sustainable over time. We're a society of people that has to mix. I mean, and it was just to sort of give people in South Africa and around the world an idea, if they don't already know, this is new to America. Even though in America dealt with slavery, they've never really dealt with this, and I'm not sure they really dealt with it. I think they put things in place to make it, be different. But did we actually deal with years and years and years of segregation and slavery? And then now suddenly one day we're, functioning normal. 200 years on or so, now we have Black Lives Matter. So it's disjointed and it's interesting, the timing of it. But yes, Americans, I think, it's not that they haven't dealt with anything before, but things like this on their home ground is new. The rioting is something that, is taking a lot of businesses by surprise, because their businesses are actually being destroyed. I've been sent many pictures from my ex-students and people around America, but there's also people who are trying to protest peacefully. So, I don't really have a personal opinion on it at this point, but there's a variety of things going on. And I feel like putting all of that under one hashtag can be pretty damaging if we don't talk about it, and how we can get past it, through it, without having to solve that problem. How do we carry on with our lives and our business? What can we do to help?
And I think that's why it's not a case of saying, okay, well, let's have a Black Lives Matter conversation, but let's have a conversation and say, actually, how we show up in the world is so important. And when we go into the world and we just coin it and claim something because you don't know the other version of someone's story, it's quite futile. It's if I go, because some of the people go like, yeah, white lives matter too. So, and you're kind of going, no, hang on, but that's not the point. The point isn't that Black people are trying to be more or something like that. There's an underlying problem that needs to be addressed. And I think the reason why I also want to have this conversation is because I think, we both come from South Africa. We know what it's like here, and how much that race card is still driven and in society and played. And yet, from the work that I do, from being a businesswoman like you are, it's so important to be able to see a version of someone else's story, and it really doesn't matter what the story is. It's like, do I have the ability as a business person, as someone showing up in the world, as someone who's making a difference? Do I have the ability to see someone for who they are, for why they have a story? One of the coaches that I did an interview with recently was also saying, in terms of building up resilience and building up confidence within a workspace, that she was doing some work with minds. And the reason why they had such a beautiful, successful moment is everyone in the mine, didn't matter what color you were, all stood up and shared a version of their story and how South Africa's been affected, or how they, and suddenly you had different races speaking about their stories, and everybody from a human level started connecting with. Like, I get goosebumps from just talking about it.
I just got goosebumps from that. I mean, I really did. You know what? Oh yeah, it's like, seriously, like how powerful is that? Now, can you imagine everyone, whether it's, in America, South Africa, everywhere, any problem exists, if they could stand up and share their story? And we can't do that in a room, but I do think we can still do that. And it's new. A lot of people are like, oh, America, but it's really new for Americans. I don't want to sound condescending or placating, but we have kind of been desensitized to the rioting and the breaking down of things. And the beauty of South Africans is the resilience they've developed through just decades of this stuff. How do you continue to function when this happens? And I think one of the most beautiful ways is exactly what you just said, is sharing, talking. But I think in order to make those talks productive, in order to make them effective, and in order to actually meet the goal of trying to see somebody else's perspective, it's easy to say that. It's so hard to do it sometimes. Like, how does a person actually physically do that? And one of the ways is to create space. If we were having a conversation about something difficult, and we really had to have the conversation, otherwise it's kind of just like the big elephant hanging around in the room, right? I would say to you, hey, Kev, let's create some space for this in between us, so that there's me, you, and it. So that we could put our thoughts and our views just on the shelf and allow the space of what we don't actually know, you know, you'll be so surprised by what you find.
It's true.
You might find amazing things in amazing people in places you just didn't think you would find it. I think people would be very surprised.
It's like I was saying earlier, just before we got online. I have been privileged with being able to do training for part of the Western Cape, and the where we were doing training specifically is for a lot of colored people and a lot of colored teachers, and for
so
colored.
If I can just stop you there, okay?
Yeah.
I need to preface something about the word colored.
Yeah, I know it's not a South African. It's only a South African word. It's not really used
I
much.
just want to preface it because it's generally an extremely derogatory word in America, and you know, and I think it's good that we actually said that, because
absolutely, please.
You know, people here they're going to hear you say that, and it's going to it may be a trigger. It may be who do you think you are? Why are you saying that? I've tried many times to explain to people that this is a whole group of people that have identified themselves, have their own culture, have their own food, have their own cultural ways. But I think the word colored was just very connotated to Black people during slavery, which is a good time to start desensitizing it, because it is the actual identification of an entire nation of people.
Yeah.
So it is, so just something.
So you guys would refer to it as mixed race, right?
There's a couple. So mixed race is one of the words people use.
Okay.
I hear the word brown coming up a lot. I'm not sure if, you know, who that's supposed to identify yet.
Yeah.
I think that's anybody of color. People of color is something they use a lot. And also the actual word they use for people of mixed races is mulatto. Never heard it in my life before, but mulatto.
No, me neither.
Mulatto.
But and essentially, I went and did training for a mixed race group of people, and what was beautiful about going through processes of coaching, one of the key entry points is creating we call it creating an ecology, and how does that sit with you as an individual? So when you're going into a new space, you put your identity on hold and you go, okay, Kevin, you just wait right there. And then you go into the space with the aim to serve, but also the aim of being open to receive anything new. And you won't believe, having gone into the space with that attitude, by the end of the training, I had one of the ladies say thank you and everything, and she ended off the conversation with an Irish blessing, and she said, "We would like to share this Irish blessing with you." And I stood there and I was like, I almost started tearing up, like, and I was going, "Wow, how beautiful!" I would not have this moment to cherish forever, to be able to, if I didn't go there, in aim to serve and to embrace what is different from me. Right. And I think that's really what people are missing about this conversation. Is they just going, oh, well, you're saying you're more important. No, I'm also important. And it's like, no, it's like, that's not the point. That's not the end. And that's, I suppose, just my candid opinion about it, is that is not the point. The point is, somewhere in the world, we need to start really reflecting on the realization of how important it is to be different, and why being different is so beautiful. And it should be cherished, and it should be embraced, and it should be, you should be curious about it. You should come from oh, wow, I really didn't know that. And because people don't, we instinctively grow up with our own version of a story, or my parents' story, or the political party's story, or whatever that is, right? And we attach, because we have some kind of sense of identity to it, and kind of go, oh no, that's what it means. It must be real. And yet, if you just took a step back and you kind of go, actually, let me just be open to hearing another person, just hearing who they are, what they're saying, and how they feel. Then you become in observation of a human, not all the little things we'd like to attach to a human, right? And I think, lending itself to this conversation is, you and I both, we both business people, we both living in a world where these stuff come up, and like you're saying, businesses are suffering, and so much trauma has happened because of it, right? Yet we both grew up in a country where it was such a big topic, and yet we both feel like actually so many people are missing this point. So many people are missing why being different is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, I saw this amazing, beautiful sign yesterday, and it was almost like the universe just screaming at me, and reminding myself. It said, be responsible for the energy you bring into this space. Because nobody else is responsible for your energy. We have moments, we get upset, we're human. I mean, we're never going to get to that moment where we are completely not offended by somebody, or completely not, why did you say that, blah, 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 affected. Yeah. However, I think, again, if we shift focus, you said it earlier, witnessing someone in the room, seeing, when you come with your space, when you come with your putting your own ideas to the side just to witness somebody else, what do you gain from them? That is Ubuntu. You're realizing another human, and therefore realizing yourself as well. I think it's really important, because how are you going to do it all by yourself and in only your way? I mean, honestly, in my opinion, how boring. It's very kind of blah. Think of, meeting people that are different. Think of, adding flavor to your food. You add spice to your food, add flavor to your business. Interesting people are interesting. People with great minds, people that don't come in a business suit sometimes. There's a lot of business people in the world that don't even wear suits. Hello, Richard Branson. Yeah. But it's, so it's, what can we take? And instead of focusing, and I'm not saying yay or nay to people's causes and being able to express themselves the way they feel they need to. However, if you're looking to get from A to B and to your goals, your business goals pretty quickly, and you're focusing on the minutia and all the details and everyone's opinion on Black Lives Matter, can you imagine how many opinions exist?
Yes.
Billions, maybe? Good luck to you. How do you siphon through all of that? When actually what you could be doing is choosing, literally saying, you know what? I don't know what's here, but I'm going to choose to go and open a space and have a conversation with somebody. And this is in many arenas. I've recently been having conversations with, genders and, that genderizing business, and it's been interesting. So really you can take that approach to any topic. Now, why that's difficult for some people is something that people need to look at. Again, be responsible for the energy you bring into this space. If you realize you're having a hard time making a connection with somebody, look into how you can maybe improve that. What skills can you use? Who can you reach out to give you an idea of, or even to help you have that conversation? But wanting to know more, wanting to have the space, I guess, is a good place to start. Even if you don't know how to do it yet, that in itself will present the space, I think. And I think if that is something that people go to, they will find incredible things. They'll find the resources for the things they need. They'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I think part of the training that we did this weekend is there's something called state, your story, your strategy. It's Anthony Robbins speaks about it a lot, Tony Robbins. And very often state refers back to the simplest form of it is the feeling that you're feeling, and like bring the energy, be aware of that energy. But then story and strategy lends itself very much to what is the story that you keep telling that you keep alive in your day-to-day life. And if race or COVID or whatever those challenges that you're experiencing is part of the story you keep alive in your world from day to day, you kind of have to kind of step back and go, well, that's my story. That's the story I choose to tell.
Right.
Because one of the things that that I always have very consciously in the back of my mind, and because we're family, our dads, for example, have that story and have maybe given us a version of what that story could be like. And very significantly, I've got to a point in my world and I'm going, you know what, I don't want to get to 80 years old and get to there and go, if only I had a different story. If only I tried, if only I made space to hear someone's version of their story. If only I endlessly pursued being better at doing today, right? I don't want to get to that point and go, so when you think of state, story, and strategy, like it applies to how you do life, like how do you get up in the morning and how you pay attention to how you get up in the morning and how do you actively get involved with changing the story. If you're not changing the story, then hey, it's like, well, then you just repeat the one you were given and see how that works for you. And if you don't find a strategy and pay attention to successful people in the world, it's a sure way of failing. And just keeping that story, that debilitating story you may have in your world, right? And it's really, and it brings it back again to how do I create space? How do I do this better and leave a different space in the world than the one I'm leaving or the one I've left at least?
Absolutely. And I found business coaches to be really helpful here in this department. And actually in the department of life, just life coaches, business coaches. There's so many things, wake up with a good routine, blah, blah, blah. And then this in the day. And then how do you do that? We're trying to implement while we're busy. It's like trying to do something while you're doing it is difficult, or change it while you're doing it. And one of the things like you suggested was, or what you mentioned was a persistent complaint. That's a good way to recognize if you're going down the storyline that is just unproductive. It's not efficient. You tell the same story every day. Like, where are you going with that? The only thing you get out of that is feeling justified. And that's great. Yeah. But now what? You're not going to get what you want. So a good way to really get calm and clear with yourself and some clarity is to really sit down and ask yourself and write it down. Honestly, what are your persistent complaints? Is it a friend that keeps bothering you? Is it, work that keeps, is it a client that, is persistently, endlessly giving back? Maybe you need to get rid of the client. Maybe you need to have a talk with your friend. Maybe you need to take a step into that open space. This space can be used for anything in your life, like you say, and this is what often business coaches and life coaches will suggest, is to stop and pause, hit the pause button. We have a company called Staples, and one of their marketing tools, Guerrilla Marketing Tools, is a big button, and you just push it and you stop. You stop what you're doing and you just look at what's going on. You have to stop sometimes. Otherwise, when do you reflect on your process? Because you're always at it, right? So I think for people in general, in their businesses, in their lives, we've been talking about how life and work is no longer mutually exclusive. Yeah. And taking care of your life is taking care of your business. When you are a business owner, you realize very quickly how many obstacles, personal obstacles, you have to overcome, of your own self and psyche and your own mind and the way you think in order to serve your clients, in order to serve your employees or the people that work for you, work with you, and create with you.
Yeah, and I think we've chatted before about it. Like, people are waiting for this magic to happen. People are waiting for someone, like, I don't know, like a magic ball, like to just land in your lap and like, oh, okay, I've got your fairy godmother. And yet, that's not how it works. The magic is make a decision. there's the magic. That's the magic. That is the magic. There is no bigger magic than that one. Make the decision that you're going to do it. Make the decision that, do you know what? This isn't working. Make the decision that you're going to have a difficult conversation with the person looking back to you in the mirror. Like, have that conversation, because to kind of just put it off the whole time and kind of go, yeah, woe is me kind of thing. It's like, maybe that's an effective strategy, or it has been up until now. But, we're living in a time where nothing seems normal, nothing about life, nothing about our business, nothing. It was like, oh, what the hell has happened? You have to be able to have a difficult conversation.
If you, even if I'm sitting here right now at this time, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I'm thinking about what's going around here, there's fires, there's earthquakes, there's hurricanes, everything's just pummeling around us. Here we are. Like, so what do I do now? Do I sit and go, okay, well, we're doomed, pull out the Coronas. I mean, they're the beers. They've been on sale here a lot lately.
Yes.
And so, I choose, okay, I can only affect the fires by talking about it, signing a petition, maybe donating some money, praying, meditating, sending good energy. But what I can do actually, and what people don't realize, is I help by bringing happy, positive energy. I know it's difficult for people to understand how that's going to put out a fire. No, it's not. But if I sit and think fire, 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 fire all day long, and I keep thinking about those fires, I just feel like I'm going to have more fire, right? If I turn and I twist and I just say, listen, there's fires going on. It's not that I don't care, but let's get down to business. I have to focus on what I'm doing. I choose to focus on this right now. All we have is right now. We don't really have any other moment, actually. This is the only moment that's happening. And the Japanese say it so beautifully, you don't have to make massive changes.
Yeah.
They call it Kaizen. And Kaizen is making one tiny change every day, which eventually ends up a beautiful structure, whatever you're building. But it's just one tiny change. It's not overwhelming, and it's doable. Every day you just pick one thing.
But, and I think COVID is exactly a fat representation of that. It's been a massive representation of that, kind of going, you really have to start being aware of like who you are and how you show up in the world. That if breathing has become precious, how is it sort of landing for people in the world that actually you need to start paying attention to how much am I involved in this process? Is how clean can we start being in our lives, in our world, in our environments? And it's been a fantastic metaphor to kind of go, we actually need to be cleaner in how we do life. And I think we also, you need to call a spade a shovel kind of thing, where the time and the moment where people went, this whole energy thing that you're referring to is like, that's nice. And I'm like, no, like, there's a lot of science that supports it. We know that energy, you can feel, and anyone and everyone can tell you the moment someone walks into a room with bad energy, they're affected. You can feel it. It's tangible, right?
Yeah,
we should start paying attention to it.
Yeah, I'm curious about how people bring this up. I'm not some sort of existential, I'm not going into the moon and the stars, despite whether I understand it or not, or whether that's what I do in my time or not. But I think if you take a human body and you take its body away, what are you left with? You're left with something.
Just energy. Yeah.
It's just energy. That is a scientific experiment. This is not, on a mass level. This is not, it's not somebody created you, no human, but you are just energy, and that is a science. That's not just, stuff. And that's a whole conversation of things. But like you say, everybody's really already kind of on it. They get weird feelings in their stomach when, they walk into a room, or they're like, you know what, something's telling me not to go there or not to see that person. And I think also tapping into that and trusting your gut a little bit, distinguishing the gut from the ego, could be a very interesting experiment for all businesses. And I know businesses these days are going far and long into, the emotional and physiological aspects of humans in order to serve well in business. Because if you understand the human better, you understand business better, you understand your client better. And also we're moving into authenticity. I often find, and I'm not sure why, but I often find myself wanting to speak about the problems in the room. And I often find the people in the room are still not ready to do so. And so I find it a little frustrating, because how do I get what I want or need if I can't just be candid without offending anybody?
And I think that's also, sorry.
When will people be ready? When are people ready to talk? It's going to get uncomfortable at some point.
And that's why, the conversation about Black Lives Matter, it's not a case of having a Black Lives Matter conversation. To bring it back to, where we started, it's about getting your brain wrapped around that there's more to this moment than you're just seeing on a social media post. There's more to this moment than just liking a page and feeding yourself with just that information. You really have to, there's more to this. And if we don't pay attention, make space for being curious about the world and people and why people say what they say, it becomes a complete debilitator. I think we can't be in the world today. I spoke to a coach this morning where she was giving it's really interesting. I'll send you the link. It's really interesting from her version of that whole sales pitch where we normally have our elevator pitch, and she's going, actually, she's come up with a whole different version of this and showing why it's so important to approach how we do business in a different sales pitch way, kind of, and she gave a lot of insight from that. But again, it boils back to the fact that you need to start being curious about what is in the world and start stepping back and kind of paying attention. I think that's really the conversation, and that's really the relevance of it, because I think we need more of it, and we need to be able to have a conversation like this and say, actually, even though it's a difficult conversation, what are we taking away from it? What is the subtext here? What can I learn from this? Because that's the empowering moment. Right.
I think a couple of things, if there's people out there that really want to, and they're ready to start hearing other people's opinions, whether they're varying opinions, different opinions, or having relationships and talks with people they haven't done before, I would say to them, just very simply start creating a space in the mind. Even if you just think of it, however you think of it is up to you, but create a space for conversation that doesn't include already, created versions of the story or, ideas or personal opinions. So create a space. The second thing is be honest with yourself. I mean, we're honestly moving into a world of authenticity. There's going to be no space for the extra. So write down your persistent complaints. I did this recently with myself because I'm human and I want to be better than I was yesterday. I want to serve my clients better. I want to serve my friends better. I want to serve my family better. So I even did this. I wrote down a couple of my persistent complaints and I started just trying to figure out, how can I approach this different? How can I choose my words different? What can I do? And then the other thing was choose. Just choose. Honestly, is going down this path, I don't even want to call it negative, but the persistent complaints of, why are they doing this? Why are they breaking this down? Why is this happening? if you don't understand it, try to suspend understanding. Try to understand that you're not going to understand everything. And you're going to have to rely on something else. But choose. Do you want to go down this path, or do you want to go down this path? And then follow the path, simply as you would if you were walking in the woods. As simple as that.
And I think that the key element to not needing to understand is the moment you put judgment on it. When you place a judgment on it, you're kind of going, oh, well, it's because you don't understand my version of this. And, sometimes you don't need to understand it. You just have to hear and acknowledge that this person has a version of that, whatever that is, whether it be Trump, whether it be Black Lives Matter, whether it be, I don't know, what Democrats and Republicans. We have a new party that started in South Africa, which is
People's Dialogue. I saw that.
So,
Michelle, right?
Yes, I remember Michelle. So that's going to be interesting to see that, because I'm liking what I'm hearing from his conversations. And it goes back to that thing where, focusing on everything that doesn't work. It's like the more you focus on it, the more you find evidence of how, just to prove that it doesn't work. So stop focusing on what's not working and start finding a solution to it.
That's true. We do
that. Like complain and then stop complaining, and then tell me how you're going to do it. How are you going to solve it? Because it's that reframing that we don't get to make that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And the words you use, language is very important. I think that's one big indicator for humans. Start listening to the own language you're speaking. Like, listen to your words. Like, what do you choose? Are you often saying, but the problem is? Or are you saying, oh, I see that's a bit of an issue. Let's see if we can find a solution to that issue. Yeah. Sometimes the solution is giving up. Sometimes that is the solution. Maybe the universe wants you to stop doing that thing and go there. But, that's...
It's funny that you mentioned that. Sorry, but I've struggled so much with that. When you kind of like you like endless pursuing of this thing, and then part of it, there's such resistance with it. I've had business partners like that, and I've had hopelessly terrible decisions around business, and and then I get to the end of it, I'm going, what the hell are you thinking? But right up front, when I think back to it, I kind of go, okay, there was a whole bunch of resistance and I just wasn't listening. I just didn't pay attention to this resistance the whole time. And now I'm like, I feel like it's called flow, or like when you're in flow with things. And it's not saying that I don't pursue stuff, but I'm very, 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 very specifically aware of if it feels good and if I'm getting yes conversations. When I'm getting a yes conversation and a no conversation, I'm like, okay, cool, that's cool. Like there's yes and no. But when it's just no, or there's resistance the whole time, I'm like, okay, cool, this is not for me. I'm not going to do it. And that may not be everyone's like entry point in this conversation, and they might think that's crazy. But I think it comes back to self-awareness. Comes like, what are you paying attention to? Like, and how are you showing up in that moment? What is the energy you're bringing to the space? Because if you're not aware of it, it's the quickest way to debilitate business, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett says, he is most thankful for the things he said no to than the things he said yes to, because he said no to more things than he said yes to. And people said no to him too, obviously. So I think resistance can act as two things, which is why it's very important to become somewhat intuitive about your work, because resistance can be a sign of don't go there. Don't go there. No matter how good it looks, don't go there. Or it can be something inside of you that you are resisting going towards. But you'll only know the difference when you start getting in touch with yourself, and really understanding, like, how does that feel versus how does this feel? One of them will feel better than the other. and that is something to trust in oneself. We have such great gauges in our bodies, actually, that we don't.
Actually, yeah.
I don't think we even really understand how good it is.
You know, just to end off today's conversation, one of the things that one of the leaders in the world that I've recently spoken to, he's the vice president of the Leadership Management International. His entry point to the conversation was, you want to change the world, draw a circle around yourself and change everything inside it. And I was like, damn, like if there was more wisdom in there like that, it's like wisdom in like its best form, because that's really, it's the bottom line.
Talk about serendipitous, but I mean, I think I actually posted that saying a few days ago, because a real shift that has occurred is, everybody is responsible for themselves, and what they do and how they show up. So, in the space of anything that happens in your world, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's, business issues or good things happening, bad things happening, life, work, relationships, these tactics can be used everywhere. Just create your space, make sure you are aware and reflecting on your own persistent complaints, and choose, like, be done with the rest. Be like, you know what, I'm so done with that, like I can't do that anymore, and I'm gonna go and do this. It's like a real like the American people, I can't do that anymore. I'm going down this path. Okay, see you all later. So I think that really chooses, like, be discerning, be very discerning about your business. So
absolutely. Lauren, thank you so much for chatting to me. It's so nice to kind of get like a version of this, because I've avoided talking about Black Lives Matter at all, because I don't believe everyone has got the full information or the full kind of understanding around it. But it's nice to kind of to hear someone's opinion about it, but also to understand how important it is to create space, create space for stories and people, and learn and be curious about who they are and the world. And and I think you and I both embrace that so much. I mean, there's so much about our lives that speak to that, right?
Yeah, I think people find me very youthful, and I think partly that is because I'm very curious. So I'm always I'm like a kid. I got my head stuck in something somewhere. Like, what is this? What is that? So it'll keep you young too. That's a bonus. And definitely being curious. I hope nobody ever loses their curiosity of life.
Exactly. Thank you so much. It's Conversations with My Cousins, happening every Friday on Lunchtime Stories. So tune in for us next week, guys. It's going to be going out live every Friday on ebizradio.com. And Lauren, thank you. I will chat to you soon.
See you later.
Ciao.
Bye.